Let me have a good look at you all. That was an impressive set of clips, a worrying set of clips, and they're going to define our future. Because they're going to define our future, I think it's more important than ever to discuss this very problem. Maslow's madness. You all know Maslow. You are taught him at school, at the university. He is the author of a well-known pyramid. And here it is. You all know that pyramid, right? You've all been taught that pyramid, right? And you're looking at me very sweetly, saying, yeah, we know that pyramid. Well, I wish you didn't. It is one of the most destructive pyramids that has ever been devised. It is completely wrong, and in being completely wrong, it is worse than just wrong. It is violent in its effects. And the quicker we get rid of it and supplant it with something better, the better it is. The pyramid, I'll just explain it to you, is indeed a pyramid. And a pyramid is a hierarchical organization of concepts, of information. And it presumes that we can derive from it a hierarchy of needs. Now, a hierarchy is an ordering, which means that what is at the top of the pyramid is the most important, and what is at the bottom of the pyramid is perhaps the most basic or the most foundational. But the top is always that which we want to achieve, and the bottom is that from where we start. And the qualities, it does plop a bit, this microphone.
Wow. Depends on how you act with it.
All right, how should I act with it? How should I act with it to stop pooping? All right, I'll try. Okay, all right, I'll try. I'm not very good at not peeing, but popping, pooping, whatever. The values expressed in the pyramid are self-evident. Of course, self-actualization is something of incredible importance. Of course, esteem is something of great importance. Of course, love and belonging, safety, and looking after the body, all these things are really important. My problem is not with the values expressed there, but with the way that the values have been arranged in a pyramid. Here I go again. I'll try and better myself, but I don't think I can. Here are a couple of sort of jokey alternatives to Maslow's pyramid, and I actually think that they really indicate where the problem lies. You know, one clever clod has added a Wi-Fi at the bottom of the pyramid. So in other words, our first basic and most urgent right should be the availability of Wi-Fi, you know? But this one I also actually rather like. The first most basic need is a branded T-shirt from the company you work for to establish your own identity. These jokey pyramids explain the problem with the pyramid. Now, Maslow has been criticized right from the word go. People right from the start knew that there was something intrinsically wrong with this pyramid, and he himself acknowledged this. So, in fact, it's not so much with Maslow that I have the problem, it's rather with the uncritical application of Maslow's pyramid that I have the problem. So, for example, Barber and Bridewell did research and discovered that the actual values that Maslow sees as so important are not always seen as important by other groups of people. And that has something to do with the way he arrived at his data. You see, as I said, it's not that the needs of that Maslow describes are not needs, or that there is never a hierarchy of them. It is that any hierarchy of values is always conditional upon a situation. That is a sentence worth repeating. Any hierarchy of values is always conditional upon a situation. And any hierarchy of needs, or any hierarchy at all, any pyramid at all, starts imposing its own norms on our behavior. It starts saying from, well, this is how the world is organized, therefore behave according to this model. Well, what if the world is slightly differently organized? Do we still organize it according to that model? Do we still obey that model? These are two pyramids. They're both of capitalism. And they sort of show the deep irony and the deep dissatisfaction of a pyramidal organization of values. Here you have, money, the king and his advisors, his prime minister and so forth, and there you have some other chaps, and there you have the soldiers, and there you have those who enjoy the wealth that these people are made. So it's a very cynical pyramid. And if we look at the pyramid as devised by the pharaoh himself, you also get quite a cynical picture of society whereby the pharaoh stands at the top of the pyramid and the slaves build it. Any pyramid is so hierarchically organized that it's almost bound to give problems, especially in a society like ours today, where we seem to admire the horizontal kinds of organization rather than the vertical or pyramidal kinds of organization. Now, how did Maslow arrive at his data? Well, he looked at something really interesting. He looked at rich... I hope that's not me. Is that me?
It's not mine.
No, it's not mine. Thank goodness. I'm so glad. I like phones. Back to Maslow's pyramid. How did he arrive at his data? And this is crucial. What he thought was, most psychologists, most sociologists find their data by looking at problems. Well, I'm going to turn it round. I'm going to look at people who have no problems, no real problems. He looked only at the most privileged group in any society. He looked at people like me. People who have found a university who will pay them to teach eager young students about what the world is like and pay them for it, right? I cannot think of a more privileged group than that. I mean, the politicians need to eat each other in order to survive, right? Rich people need to do all sorts of horrible things to stay rich. Academics just need to teach young people. Well, eager young people, not sort of horrible young people that sort of, are in their school years. No, eager, young, interested people like you guys who are eager to learn. Well, you cannot find a more quiet, restful group than the academic. And it is by investigating their needs that he arrived at his pyramid. What would have happened if he had investigated that family instead? How would he have arrived at his pyramid then? Well, I think the pyramid would have looked very different. I don't think it would have been a pyramid. He would have very quickly realized that actually a pyramid is just about the worst way to organize these values. And what you should really do is find some way whereby you see that all these values are important, but that they do not have a preempted hierarchical structure determining them. Something perhaps like this. And maybe the problem starts by not separating the important from the urgent. With poor people have urgent needs, right? Which may not be as important as rich people's needs, but maybe more urgent. And some important needs are no longer so urgent for rich people, whereas they're very urgent for poor people, or the other way around. So the pyramid doesn't take into account a simple complexity like urgency and importance. It sort of puts everything on one heap, and by that creates the chaos it does. Let me just tell you a little story. I spent 5 years in Jamaica and really enjoyed it. But it wasn't an enjoyment that was only about being rich. It was an enjoyment that meant that I had to work for my money and work at my mind, because I had to cope with things that I'd never before coped with. And one of the things I had to cope with was the direct confrontation with an extraordinary poverty that I had never experienced as a comfortable middle-class white male living in Holland. All right? This is what the tourist brochures will show you about Jamaica, and there are bits that really do look like that. They are absolutely gorgeous. And sometimes the landscape is just totally spectacular. But the reality is a little different. This is where many of Jamaicans live. They're special South Africa flats because they were given to Jamaica by the government, the apartheid government, by the way, of South Africa. The question you now need to ask yourself is, would there be anything in you that would even think about living in a place like that? It's called Denim Town and Tivoli Gardens. It is the most violent place probably on earth, or one of the most violent places on earth. Life is so cheap that a person can get killed for 20 Jamaican dollars, which is about, I don't know, I think it's about €1. So if life comes that cheap, it's pretty cheap indeed, right? It's walled in. People try and make a living, but notice the way they're trying to make a living. Notice the way that they're decorating their little carts. And what do those carts say? Right? Love, Jesus saves, Godzilla. He's just been to see a movie perhaps, or heard about it. This is where I lived. I was rich. I lived in what was called a compound, and it was guarded by a little chap who sits in this little house there, and he wears an enormous gun, and he's paid about €3 a day. So I'm giving my children to a place where a guard has got a huge gun, and he's paid not even nearly enough to keep his own children alive. What does that kind of thing say? Everywhere there are walls, and all of them are prettified. Also, poor people have walls made of corrugated iron, trying to keep the nasty people out. Walls are a necessity. If you don't impose walls on this society, people invade your space and take whatever is given. So, middle-class people live in prisons. This is the kind of prisons a middle-class person will live in. And it is literally a prison. There are things called rape gates, and you close them in order to prevent your wife from being raped. Interestingly enough, notice the similar morphology for the rubbish dump. Even the rubbish needs to be put behind bars in Kingston, Jamaica, apparently. This is how you buy kerosene. Because a shop would be emptied immediately, would be stolen away. So people sell kerosene through a hole in the wall. Hey, could I have some kerosene? Huh? Yeah, all right. Give me the money. You put your hand through the wall, give the money, and you get the kerosene through the wall. If you think that's special, it happens all over the place. If you want a Coke, you buy it through a hole in the wall. Here you can buy all sorts of things. Welcome to Mama Lou's. This is the shop. But if you look carefully, you see that all these people trying to make a life for themselves are trying to make that life in such a way that there's something of dignity left in it. These are shops for very poor people indeed, but they're trying to make a go. Hang their washing everywhere. Wait, something's going wrong here. And they decorate their boats, and they open their God bless shopping complexes, and they say that Jesus is coming soon and signs need to be painted. And they write Psalm 51 on their doors. Again. And this is the worst place. This is Riverton City. This is the city dump. And there's a whole city that is built on the city dump. And these children and people live from sifting the rubbish of Riverton City. And they build their houses of temporary corrugated structures. But there's a paint factory quite close by. And so they can teeth the paint and make beautiful surrounding structures of them. These are the lowest of the low. These people have absolutely nothing. And yet for them it is still important to create surroundings from which they can somehow derive a modicum of dignity. And that for them is of extreme importance. And when they come into some money, you don't believe the fantasies they build for themselves. You know? They build whole castles for themselves, but not even just for themselves, for the whole neighborhood. This chap came into some money, don't ask how. Don't ask what he had to do for it. But with that money, he started a kung fu school, and now he's trying to do something for the rest of the neighborhood. The country is completely torn apart by politicians who have divided the city into areas for this party or for that party. You know how they buy their votes? They give them a chicken. Here, I'll give you a chicken, you give me your vote. That's how it works in this country. This is not funny, this is just true. They don't want their place to be pissed under by people, and so they put it on graffiti. This is the face we get to see on television. Beautiful little ordered pictures, but this is Trenchtown, and Trenchtown is a place where people die on a Friday night, and it's usually the police killing them. What I noticed from my time in Jamaica is that these people have their physiological needs, have their need for love and esteem, have their need for all the needs that Maslow talks about. But they're not hierarchized. It's precisely the other way around. It's because they have almost nothing and can barely furnish themselves with their physiological needs that actually their self-actualization needs get even bigger priority. These people are hungry, yes, but even more than food, they need respect. They need dignity. They need a sense of their own dignity. And that is why I've grown to loathe that pyramid of Maslow with such vengeance. You see, this is very modest architecture, but it is an architecture that almost anyone would be quite happy to occupy. Why isn't it possible that we design even temporary homes with that sense of dignity, as it were, built in the design process? So, well, I'm not going to read you all this, but essentially it says, look, it's not the system, it's about people. And I think we should get rid of Maslow's silly little pyramid and replace it with a non-hierarchical pyramid, perhaps something like this, saying that every shelter needs to be designed with these three main concerns in mind. Sure, safety and shelteredness, Sure, accommodate the needs of the body, but also always look after a person's desperate need for dignity. Thank you very much indeed.